We love shooting, hunting, and educating. So if you want to learn about long-range shooting, you're in the right place. This is the Long Range Addicts Podcast. Shooter ready, stand by.
All right, welcome on this fine Wednesday. It's been a week already. I don't know where the hell the time flies when these things go down, but we had a good one last week where we had a little bit of a challenge. If you get a minute, go listen to that with Jose and Justin. It was kind of interesting where we kind of went down rabbit holes talking about some things. But first off, I'd like to again thank Benchmark Barrels for their support. They've got a deal ending maybe tomorrow. Is tomorrow the last day? $20 off your order of your Benchmark barrels. So go on and order that. They've also just got a new shipment of swag, which I just placed an order for. They've got some good looking swag. Again, appreciate all of you tuning in. We know it's kind of crazy right now, and hopefully you can get a little bit of education in your week on these Wednesday nights. We're going to welcome JD back. How you doing, JD?
Great. Thanks for having me, Cole.
Of course. And of course, we're going to introduce Mark. So Mark Lang, I met last year at the NTOA conference, which is National Tactical Officers Association conference. We were down in Orlando. And Mark was good enough to kind of take me and show me some of the things they do in training when I was down there at Phone Scope, kind of seeing how we can, integrate some of that stuff. And we actually went into the Amway Center, which was a eye-opening experience, which was really, really fun and kind of gave me a perspective on how law enforcement snipers train and the different things that they have to go through and, the outside the box thinking that a lot of them have to take nowadays, especially with all the crazy ass people around. So, Mark, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Cole.
Good. Tell everybody about yourself and how you got kind of where you're at.
I don't think it's been anything special. It's just longevity in the LE career. Did about 8 years in patrol for a large law enforcement organization in North Texas. Then I did like a lot of guys do, tried out for the SWAT team. Didn't make it the first time. I don't think I made it the second time. I finally made it the third time and became a member of the team. And I've been on the team ever since. So nearing 30 years in law enforcement and proud to say, 21 years going strong with a full-time SWAT team.
That's cool. And then, during that, that's where you kind of build all your sniper experience and cross-train and did some things like that. And you trained with Kraft, right?
Yep. We had a wonderful time when I kind of pitched a job pitch, if you will, to Chris Cowell. I still remember it as if it was yesterday, being in the Kraft International offices. Enrico Durazo, who's the founder of Tacflow Academy, who I represent also, was in there also. And so I had a lot of demand and requests for teaching public venue curriculum for snipers outside of Texas. Kind of the origins were, when we first started doing this, we started doing it just in our city, inviting other alike snipers to participate, which we knew had good skill sets, because we were shooting off the flat range and we were going to start taking live shots inside of the stadium. And then it progressed to request to teach it and broaden the base out to the state of Texas. So we began to teach for the Texas Tactical Police Officer Association. And then the next step, as you can imagine, is guys get wind of the training that we're doing, and they want to know, first of all, can you teach people from outside the state of Texas, and can you go mobile with the training? So to that end, I pitched it to Chris, and he accepted, and he was happy to have us teach our curriculum under the Kraft International banner.
Yeah, and that's saying something to get, somebody like that to believe and trust in what you're doing. And, I've seen it a lot, and I'm no sniper by any means, and I just kind of follow along and try to learn how some of the products I push can kind of fit in with snipers. But it's amazing to me, and it started quite a few controversies as of late. How a lot of officers are still training in a way that isn't necessarily the way to train now. Times change, evolution comes, things come, and you guys have kind of taken that and evolved the training. And a lot of that has to do with public venue training. What do you guys look at, and what do you go into when you're trying to bring students or snipers into public venues?
Well, first of all, I want to say, Cole, the realities are, especially since 1 October in Las Vegas, is that if you were a police sniper on a SWAT team, and keep in mind, most of these guys, they're not on full-time teams. So let me kind of describe what that looks like. A full-time team, SWAT team on any city or county is, they come to work and their duties essentially revolve around all things SWAT. That's being able to train on duty, training at the range, and then running operations, not necessarily in that order. With that said, the majority, and this is certainly per the National Tactical Officer Association, the majority of SWAT teams in this country are what we call collateral duty, or part-time teams. And these guys, essentially, for the most part, you're looking at guys that have other daytime jobs, if you will, with their PD or sheriff's office, and they have to find time to work that SWAT side of things. Typically, that looks like 1 day a month for the entire team getting together, maybe 2 days a month. And then for the sniper element, you're looking at 1 day also per month. So if you kind of do the math on that, it's not a whole lot of time to spend working on your craft. But with that being said, many of them excel in it, and I'm proud of where a lot of them are and where a lot of them are trending currently.
Yeah, and I've kind of noticed that, in the limited, it's, I guess you could kind of, me and JD could put it as Army National Guard type thing. A guy is training all the time, 24/7 for something, and then a National Guard, it's kind of your 1 weekend a month to kind of go training, kind of fit everything in, which is another great thing that these guys can kind of come to Tacflow and to you guys with, because it's hard for anybody to go out there and try and find the right equipment to do the right job. There's so much equipment. There's bags, there's ammo, there's guns, there's all these separate things out there that they're having a really hard time trying to figure out. And that was one thing that I was really impressed with when you guys went into it, was you set everybody down at first and said, hey, this is what we use. And more importantly, this is why we use it, which was a big staple in my mind, because then it kind of answers a lot of those guys' questions of, all right, well, I need to upgrade. If I want to be better sniper, or if I want to be a better, SWAT guy, I'm going to invest in myself, and this is the way we need to do it. And I was extremely impressed in the way you guys kind of put that out. So, it was different. It was different from a lot of things where you just kind of, I've been in a lot of trainings where they just show up and they start shooting, and great shooting, had a great time, go home now. And that kind of set the bar a little bit different. And I think almost everybody in your class was like, I'm going to come back and I want to do more.
Well, and again, I learned this from Paul Howell many years ago. When Paul got out of the Army, he started his own company, and we had the fortune of training with him. Was that you've got to be assessing your equipment, your kit, all the time. If you ever think you've arrived there and you've got exactly what you need, you haven't. And that parallels a lot of things where it goes to training, being satisfied on how operations go. You've always got to be looking for better ways. And I think if you stop trying to find better ways or to do things, then that's just really not a good place to be. But yeah, you got to evaluate the kit. There's certain things we pull from our brothers in the military and special forces snipers, and one of them is mission specific, kit. What is your mission? And it's not like we're trying to turn the police sniper into a military sniper. We're not. But there's great value in things and how they do things that actually enables us to do our job more efficiently. But I can have the entire kitchen sink in my police vehicle, But when it comes time to deploy, especially if it's a rapid type deployment, a hasty deployment, it does me no good if it takes me, 20 minutes to get away from my vehicle because I've got literally too much stuff. I need to have it well organized, and I need to have it broken down into the different missions, the different operations that are germane to us in law enforcement.
Right. And the crazy thing is there's so many different, places that you're going to have to go. When I was down in Orlando, they talked about, when I was down there with the SWAT team, they were talking about, learning where their longest shot would be in their area. And I believe it was Walt Disney World, was they were worried about a certain position there. And they were smart enough to figure that out prior to, and then knowing how far that shot was and, training for it and different things, which is awesome. But that's one thing that kind of sets you guys apart is you guys go into certain venues. Now, the Amway Center, which is where the Orlando Magic play, is where we went and shot that day. And
yes,
it was freaking nuts. And people were like, oh, they don't train in there. No, you guys actually go in the arena, you shut it down, and you train, which is freaking crazy because they've got targets down on the floor. They're shooting from the rafters. They're learning, high angle. They're learning how to shoot from the backs of chairs. They're learning how to utilize, tripods, stuff like that, which is nuts. It's, as you said at the first, it is not a flat range because that's not going to do it. And, that can kind of tangle in with the PRS a little bit, but tell us how you guys go into, and the thought processes of going into, if there's an LE sniper listening, how would you go planning in your head how you want to go through a venue and understanding some of that? Just basics. I know it's a long list, but
yeah, the curriculum was not built overnight. We've been doing this since 2008, and we started at limited use venues, and we have kind of just transcended everything, and we've done a couple of Super Bowl workups for the local teams there. But I think you've got to have. I'm really big on being formally trained in something. If I don't have a knowledge base, and this goes into education, if you haven't educated me on what I need to do, and you just send the guys out and you say, all right, go to venue X, go forth and plan your overwatch positions, come back and come up with a plan for not only yourself, the sniper cadre, but also the rest of the entry guys, the operators. It can be a daunting task. Where do you draw that information from? Where do you get that information? What I like to think we do well with Tacflow is not only do you get to, yes, do live fire training in the venues, but also, more importantly, and we say this at every class, and I don't know if you were present at a particular time, I said to the guys at the range, but if this class is not about shooting. We expect you to be able to shoot 1 minute of angle or better already. What we do expect is to impart so much knowledge and education on you that you have the ability to go out there and plan it. Some guys, and so, if you want to kind of, what does that look like? You've got some guys that, the operational tempo of some snipers is such that they've done a lot of overwatches, and overwatches, whether it's outside for a large scale event, can transcend to the venue. And conversely, if you do a lot of overwatches for sports teams, sporting events at venues, it can transcend out to open air where you're now overwatching large scale events. So if you can do it well and you've got a good knowledge base, then that's great. I recently came up with a best practices guide that a lot of supervisors have taken a liking to, because it basically details large-scale events and venues, what elements of resources, if you will, from the SWAT team need to be present for a successful operation. And certainly in case something, we had an act of terror. But I wouldn't assume everybody out there knows how to go forth and set up an overwatch and plan for the other side. You got to keep in mind that the sniper element alone is not the complete piece. The puzzle involves so many moving parts, not only of the SWAT team, but of fire rescue, hazmat, and a lot of different other elements. Bomb technicians, I'm huge on bomb technicians, and certainly the tactical bomb technician program that is in place by the FBI. Huge resources. There's so many of these resources that have to overlap. But how do you know? How do you have contacts with these resources? How do you know to bring them all together? And again, the act of actually coming off safe and sending a 30 cal projectile into flight and hitting your target may be so minuscule, but everything else that you have to know to have all these assets and resources there and working together, okay, under unified command, that's where a lot of guys kind of are not say lost. It's not their fault. They just haven't been educated and they don't know what they need to do. But I don't want to discount what guys are out there that not necessarily have not attended or training, because I think there's a lot of switched on sniper teams, SWAT teams out there that certainly have done very well for themselves.
Right. And it amazes me how many of them are kind of stuck in the past too, you know, with products and different things, with all the new stuff coming out. You know, I saw an argument the other day about rear bags and how many people don't use them, and, you know, different things, and getting a stable platform and different things like that. And it kind of takes me back to you in the kitchen sink in your cruiser, you know, and understanding what products you need to take and understanding how to utilize them. Now, it was amazing to me when you guys set up, you know, in the PRS, when we shoot, we use a tripod on a lot of different things. It's amazing to me how many of these students had never used a tripod or understood, you know, shooting from a tripod. Do you get stuff like that a lot, to where they're kind of stuck and you guys kind of have to bring them into the 21st century? Or how do you guys go about training that correctly?
You know, yes and no. I would say in the last several years, the advent of the shooting tripod has really spread pretty well across the United States in regards to SWAT teams and snipers. You know, my friend Josh Stabler, which many know, certainly the military side of the house, his phrase there is, a prone shot is rarely taken, is very, very true. So to that extent, to that point, you know, the tripods really have transformed, I really believe, what the police sniper can bring. And certainly I know it's existed a little bit longer on the military side of the house, but it's huge to know that you can be lethal and, be efficient in a standing position with a quality tripod, with a quality rifle rest is huge. Now, when these guys come through the classes, we see varying abilities. I sit there, and again, I'll kind of back up. Our course is not for the green sniper, the rookie sniper, the one that just went through a basic 40 or 50-hour sniper course. That's not exactly who we're looking for. We want those that have been on the sniper team several years, that have had time to get some significant training, attend other courses by other instructors, and then that would be a great time to come back. The realities are what we've seen, especially with the millennial generation, not only in the workforce everywhere in the United States, we've seen it in law enforcement, and then we're also seeing it on the SWAT team, is the guys that we're getting in our classes are millennials, but, and not to say anything negative, what I'm getting at is they've got 1 or 2 years on that precision rifle, and that's it by the time they come to us. And a lot of that could, we could spend an entire hour talking about attrition on SWAT teams, turnover, and stuff like that. But at the very basic concept here, it's just a generational change of who is performing those duties. Now, back to the tripods, we've seen the need for quite some time, and I'm a huge advocate for wanting to impress upon them that you don't need to be looking for the prone position, because it's not going to be available. You get into these venues, you have parapets, typically your ideal overwatch positions they have a ledge, they have a wall. And so you've got to be able to get up there. The days of just trying to wing it and take a shot off a ledge, that's great if you've got to do it in emergency. But if you've got a tripod and you've trained on it and you know your capabilities and limitations, then that's something you should deploy. Key to our course and our curriculum is our courses are usually 4 to 5 days in length, is we have a finite amount of time to spend with these guys and to press upon them. We're not trying to teach everything. Everything is germane to the course we're teaching. But back to the tripods, one of the things we strive for is teaching them what we recommend is 3 or 4 of the best tripods out there, and we give them a lot of work time to do it. We ask them to, if you already have a tripod, bring that tripod. We want you to shoot on it. We want you to get that practical experience shooting at the venue, but we also want you to shoot on these other tripods that we have so that you can open your mind up to what other systems, the pros and cons that they may have. I've learned a long time ago, there is no perfect tripod rifle rest out there. Each one has significant pluses and some have minuses. And I think at the end of the day, it comes back to personal choice. A lot of times it comes back to what you can afford, the realities of it, because, you would think that tripods are something that's provided for at every SWAT team, but the realities are it's not. So a lot of these guys are having to pay for equipment out of their own pocket. So when you're supporting your family or if your wife doesn't work and you got kids, you're looking for the best piece of equipment you can afford. So they get a really good look going through the curriculum and shooting on the different variations we have out there. And I think that serves them real well when they come out away from the course.
Hey, Mark, you mentioned it's not for the young student or the young sniper to take your courses. So you go over a lot of stuff, a lot of technical, more advanced stuff, especially with tripods. I mean, we see it on the military side. That's a huge technique that a lot of guys just flat out struggle with. I mean, you're looking at a lot of guys in SOF even have a rough time with tripods. So where do you see the students being most efficient at, like when they arrive to the course in the first day or so of shooting, and what can they do to prepare? Even the more advanced students that come, what are the drills, or what did you wish you could tell them like 2 weeks before they show up, or hey, you have 3-4 range days, knock out this before you come up or come to our course, and it's going to put you leaps and bounds ahead of I guess the learning curve.
2 words: positional shooting. I am huge. I really challenge these guys, and I'm not apologetic for it. I say this with all the sincerity. You should be a master of positional shooting. Often we see our peers when we actually do, and funny you talk about that. I actually send out a course email, informational email, weeks in advance of these courses. I don't wait until 2 days before. I'll send this stuff way a lot in advance and say, look, you're gonna be vetted at the range day. So basically, the makeup of our course is, if it's a 4-day course, is you got a range day which you're auditioning to shoot at the venue. I cannot, and I don't hold bars when I say that. Your skills are on audition. So if that doesn't get you nutted up when you see that in an email, it should. But also, if you're confident with your skill set, then it should bring about a sense of peace to know that, hey, and I'm not unreasonable. Trust me, I just want to know that you can run your rifle and do positional shooting. What I have found is those that excel in positional shooting, and I really do not want to, Jacob Bynum would kill me if I left out the fundamentals of marksmanship here, is that you must be a master of the fundamentals. I probably the one thing I wish my community did better would spend more time on the fundamentals. I don't think you can spend enough on them. Anyway, but the fundamentals, positional shooting, applying those, when you think about muscular relaxation, natural point of aim, bone support, if you can just apply those to any position you shoot, you're going to be deadly, even if you can get 2 out of the 3. So I really think impressing upon them positional shooting. Typically, if they do that well, it transcends to the tripod, whether or not they've got prior tripod experience or they have not.
Yeah, and the big thing that I saw, coming into your thing was how much those guys would probably benefit in going and shooting a few PRS matches. Now, not just because it is off a certain tripod, but it's like looking at that tripod and then picturing in your mind, okay, where in my task or duty, where would I see something like this to shoot off of? Maybe it's just a board up or something, and then they put it in their mind like, okay, I'm going to be shooting off a railing somewhere, or I'm going to be doing something like that. And it's amazing how many police snipers have showed up to matches that I've shot, and they walk in there, and nothing against them. A lot of them walk in there thinking this is just the easiest thing ever, and they get their ass kicked. And a lot of it's because they're not going out and taking the time upon themselves to kind of shoot, kind of like what you guys are doing. Do you think the PRS NRL type stuff is a huge benefit to police snipers?
I'm so happy you brought this up. I think it's a huge benefit. And let me, as we sit here and talk about how the PRS community, and before that, we would glean information from the Three Gun Nation, also from the military side of the house, whether, we've had scout snipers instructors from Lejeune come into our organization years and years ago. Heck, they're the ones that introduced us to tripod shooting, right? So it's pulling that information from here, the competitive shooting sports, and the military side, pulling that all into the law enforcement side to make us better. That is where the two areas we get our information from, okay? The PRS community, I think there's a lot to be said there. And I'll have to give a shout out to B Tactical in Roy City, Texas. They hosted actually my team of guys. We went out there last year, and Don Jarecki, who is a very high rated PRS shooter, took time out of his schedule to spend the day with us and kind of talk about some tips, techniques that they are utilizing in PRS, what they're doing to make their shots in those competitions. And that's stuff that we take away, and it may have only been one day performed of training one time a year, but I still recall the information that he imparted to us. That stuff is huge, okay? I'm a huge proponent of get outside your agency, your organization, and learn from others. If all you know is the guy next to you and the other guy next to you on your left and right, and that's the knowledge base on your team, that's a bad place to be. You've got to get out there and seek outside training providers from legitimate ones. And look, we can spend another hour talking about there's a proliferation of guys out there that probably shouldn't have any business training on both sides of the houses. But I really believe that you got to step out of your comfort zone. You got to humble yourself, and you got to realize that there are better ways to do things. But you got to know where to grab that information and then bring that information back to your team to better them.
Yeah, and it amazes me, kind of, the lack of maybe it isn't. Maybe, and this is where I kind of wanted to bring you on. Do you think there is a lack of motivation across the board for a lot of them to better themselves? Because I guess let me preface that, because how much would you say a sniper ever will fire a rifle? Is it probably most will never fire a rifle, correct?
Well, I defer to the data. I'm a huge data guy. Where do we get our data when it comes to police snipers and use of force, officer-involved shootings? Is from the American Sniper Association. Since they started collecting data, and I'll do a myth buster as I say this. If you asked even the civilian community or even those in law enforcement military, you can ask them, what is the average distance of a police sniper engagement in non-permissive environment, okay? They're going to probably tell you 70 or 71 yards. If you follow that up with, where do you get that information from? What do you think they're going to tell you? Well, the running joke is they have been saying the FBI, when the reality is the FBI has never collected any data on law enforcement use of forces by snipers. Never has. Okay. So if I can kind of go back to American Sniper Association, Derek Bartlett with Snipercraft many, many, many years ago started collecting this data. So what he requests and what guys do, if you're involved in an officer-involved shooting with a precision rifle as a sniper assigned to a SWAT team, whether it's collateral duty or full-time, is that sometime after that incident, you basically fill out a one-page document, send it in to them. Names are withheld, agencies are withheld, and he collects that data. And that empirical data allows us to sit there and study where these have happened, what time of day these have occurred, how many, even down to projectiles having through and throughs, what type of projectile was used, the distances. The realities of it, according to the last document that was produced in 2019, is our average distance of use of force is 59 yards. It's not 70, it's not 71, it's not 100, 59 yards. Kind of to your question that you asked before is, since he started collecting the data back in the 80s, there have been well over 400 police sniper shootings, and some of them have involved multiple snipers. The other aspect of this also is that the longest shot was well over 500 yards, I believe around 595, and the closest for the police sniper, since all this was documented, was 5 yards. And it was kind of a hostage shot off the back of his partner in a standing position. So, I can sit there and look at my career and say, with the precision rifle, the 308, have I been in an officer-involved shooting? Well, it was a little different aspect. It was on a inanimate object. But I would say, this world, I don't see it getting any better, unfortunately. I think we're still trending toward a bad time. And I think the things we see overseas, we've already begun to see here stateside, whether that's vehicular attacks or whatever the case may be. But I don't know, it's hard to say, and it's hard to really to kind of answer your question. Could you go a long 10, 15-year career as a sniper on a SWAT team and not pull the trigger? Sure. But you could be a guy that could be the same amount of time on a team and maybe have 2 to 3 officer-involved shootings with that precision rifle.
Yeah, and the reason why I ask, and I wanted to kind of go down this road because I see it a lot. I saw it in the military. I see it, in day-to-day police. Well, I don't need to train that much because I don't think I'm ever going to need to use it, and it's just like, why do you have a fire extinguisher in your house? Why do you go through certain steps of doing things? Because eventually you might need that. And it amazes me how many people in their brain, and this isn't just in police, military, or anything else, it's just the civilian world too. I went and bought a pistol. I'm good. Don't need it. We don't need to train, right? And this is kind of why I bring this up is a lot of snipers, I think, and I want to be told differently. A lot of police snipers are like, we're good. We can shoot. We don't need more training because we might never use it. Is that a thought process? And if so, it probably shouldn't be one, right?
So statistically, if let's just say Agency X, they've got a full-time SWAT team. In the last 20 years, if their police snipers assigned to their team, and let's say they have 6 or 8 or 10, if they've never have had an officer-involved shooting, then what does that tell, or what kind of culture does that create with the rest of your team? The rest of your team says, let's look at where we do most of our work, whether that's warrant service, whether that's barricade, whether that is hostage rescue, or that's anything terrorism related. So all the training kind of gravitates toward that. I think you start becoming very closed-minded when you think that just because it has not been used, that it will not be used. And even more dangerous is when that person is charged with that responsibility, in this case, the police sniper, then conversely allows that organizational culture to seep into him. And to your point, they go out, they lay on their belly, they shoot a 5-round group, they pat themselves on the back, and they go home to their wife and they show them the target and say, look how good I am. I would like to say probably that's not the case in the country, but I'm sure it does exist in certain areas. I'm happy to say since we've been doing our venue courses and stuff like that, I'm really happy to see that we're trending in a better area, whether it's the youth, new people into the program, people being reinvigorated, challenged, or just having tragedy, tragedy occur in neighboring jurisdiction or something like that. I think it's apathy. We get very apathetic in our skill set. I think if you have the opportunity to go shoot at the range, you need to do that. But just as importantly, the training aspect, I think you should have the education aspect of it too. Educate yourself. Sometimes you just need to sit in a room with your peers and either have a topic of presentation, some learning objectives, and you need to cover things. And it may not even involve going out to the range. But the next time you go out to the range, apply what you would just receive through education, go out there and apply it. But I think, it's apathy. And and I don't know how that really exists anymore in our world, when every time you turn on the TV, every time you get up every morning, there's been, another law enforcement officer killed just recently, last day or two, in Arizona alone, of officers that have been shot and killed. You're not guaranteed, heck, even waking up in the morning. Certainly when you put on that uniform, you're not guaranteed to come home to your family. So train like, your life depends on it. I remember Benny Cooley, who's a good friend, had said many years ago that, we don't do things because of one or two reasons. One is either not important to us, or two, we're lazy, or perhaps it's a combination of both. But if you really sit there and apply that to many aspects of your life, I think a lot of times, if it isn't because you're lazy, it's just because we don't perceive that as being important enough.
Right. And so another side to that is there's a lot of LE snipers, and I kind of stepped aside with a couple that were there and kind of picked their brain a little bit. And they're like, we've been trying to do this forever, but our captain or our chief doesn't think we need to because there hasn't been any. So if there's a sniper listening right now and they've been trying to go to their chief or their leader, their sergeant, whoever, how would you recommend them doing that? Because I know that's out there and they've tried and they're like, oh, well, you don't need that because we haven't shot at anybody forever, or we haven't done this, we haven't done that. How would you tell them to be able to confront that person?
First of all, don't take no as the final answer. That's what you've got to understand. Maybe it was an issue or problem with how you presented it. Maybe you didn't present it professionally. Maybe you didn't have a clear, defined plan on what you wanted to do. If it was, hey, boss, sergeant, lieutenant, we want to shoot away from the range. We want to get some bullet traps, and we want to put them in an abandoned apartment complex, and we want the guys to take some shots. Even if it's just a 50-yard shot, it's that operational trigger time that is away from the range, which is huge, huge. I cannot tell you how huge it is for these guys to get out there and do that. But, a lot of it is in presentation. Now, if you've done your homework and you've presented it in a clear, defined way, in a professional manner, and I always tell these guys, I said, you want to do something professional, is put your thoughts on a PowerPoint presentation. And it doesn't have to be anything grandiose. Just build you a simple 5 to 10 point slide presentation, and then bring in your supervisors and kind of go through it. Hit that. Not only does it look professional, but if they didn't take you seriously, they may take you seriously now, because they know you've taken the time and the effort to prepare something for them to view. Don't take no for an answer. I think one of the things I'm proud of with Tacflow is that we've been able to do is break down these walls so that many in the country see that, hey, shooting in a venue, live fire, precision rifle fire is not taboo. It's not something that we're trying to act like is a black operation. It doesn't have operational security that no one knows about. Quite often, whether it's on Instagram or on a Facebook page, and we know how Facebook kind of clamps down on the gun side of things, there's a reason why we put certain images and video content out there. Is to let the other law enforcement personnel know that this training is taking place. It's okay that this training is taking place, and empower them to not only come to our courses, but more importantly is replicate the training back at their own agency, and to make not only themselves but their team better. But you're going to be told no. Look, it's a lot to ask every supervisor in the chain of command to be open-minded. The realities are you're going to run into open-minded people and closed-minded people. What you need, and I would tell you this, is that you need someone who's a supervisor 9 out of 10 times that is like-minded and that is fighting for your cause. You can be as passionate as you want, but if you're not a supervisor, you've got probably at least double the amount of work ahead of you. So find a like-minded supervisor, attach yourself to them, and say, look, this is what we need to get taking place. I've got so many success stories of guys doing that, finding that supervisor, whether it's a first-line supervisor or a second-line supervisor. And when that occurs, you're starting to see that the opportunities for training away from the range actually increase also. If you're kind of out there standing on an island by yourself and everyone thinks that you're crazy, not only your supervisors, but if your peers feel that way about you also, then it's going to be very, very difficult to get that accomplished. But identify and find that supervisor is key, and don't give up. And if there's anything I can ever do, and I do this quite often through emails and phone calls. In fact, this morning I spoke with a Pennsylvania police sniper, helping him out on something. It's we're always here as a resource. Just because you didn't take a class from us in Tacflow, that doesn't mean anything. It's all about the community, the sniper community, and trying to help everybody.
Yeah.
Hey, just looking at it from like helping out all those students and really potential students look at venue shooting, what are the biggest things you've had to overcome with getting the necessary permissions to shoot in these venues? What were the, I don't want to say the hoops, what are the challenges you had to overcome to, one, show proficiency, but two, just to gain the confidence of the owners and everything like that in the city?
JD, it really, if I can summarize it in one thing, it's who's going to hold the hot potato. So if you're tracking with me, who's going to hold the hot potato? And I make an L here. Who's going to assume the liability? Okay. So everything in our country, everything in law enforcement is driven by liability, and then tracking it back to, have you crossed your T's? Have you dotted your I's? Okay. Is this court defensible? And certainly that's the world I live in. I think one of our keys to our success is that I come from this world where you got to have everything squared away. And whether it's training, whether it's operations or whatnot. So that transcends into trying to take a training curriculum, which involves live fire, into venues that I'll be honest, initially we were primarily working with limited use venues. That is venues that don't entertain big events on a weekend to weekend basis. That over the years developed. I think people started taking notice of our track record of, first of all, integrity and also safety. At some point, you kind of hit an apex. And for us, it was probably back in 2015. We were invited out to California, Santa Clara specifically. And Santa Clara, their special response team, invited us to come in and not only do training for the snipers and those that would be they're present on the Super Bowl 50 at Levi's Stadium, but also they want some training for the entry personnel. So we were able to accomplish that in an entire week-long course. When we kind of hit that as an apex, doing the course that was prior to the Super Bowl and Super Bowl workup, that allowed us to really have the ability to go into many of these venues with the point of contact. And the point of contact always, 9 out of 10 times, originates with that guy that was told no, and he kept pushing and he kept pushing and he kept pushing until they basically said, okay, if you want to see if your snipers can host this training, go into this venue, go do it. Just get out of my office. And I say that, and that's how sometimes this plays out. It's kind of like, get away from me, go make this happen. And now we're able to, as a training company, to come in there and say, look, I'll send you a couple documents. One of them shows where we've done this training at. And that document, along with you being there and having a passion for this training, and also it's a key plus that your team currently at times deploys at that venue. So you go in there, you show them that, hey, we want to get some formal training on this, and it's become so much easier. I've had courses come together. Literally, I handled one, and we got permission for it to take place on a phone call, a conference call, when I was actually in transit. It was a conference call, and they just want to basically say, hey, I've got you here with the VP of Stadium Operations. Let's get the go-ahead on this. I'm like, sounds good to me. I'll be back in touch with you some dates, possible dates. And I can reference this most recent one, our great partners with the Miami-Dade Police Department in Miami, essentially in months. The training that we did recently in December at Hard Rock Stadium, really in months materialized so that we could set dates that they would allow us to do that during the NFL season prior to the Super Bowl load-in, the build-up for the game, and we're able to get it done. And again, it's just running it professional, it's running it with integrity, and it's going in there with the safety record that we have. And again, demanding accountability from, and I don't think I've spoken on this yet, demanding accountability from each one of those guys, those LA professionals that show up. We preach it all the time. It is 100% around accountability. There's no 99%, there's not 99.5%. Every time you pull that trigger, you've got to be accountable for that projectile goes. And that projectile, better end up in that MGM stadium bullet trap. And they do. And that's because we demand that. That first day we spend on our course is at the range. And like I said, it's a time to audition your skills. One of the worst things I have to do during our course is if we have police snipers that don't have the skill set, they're not showing the confidence, they're not showing what we need them to be by the time we leave that range at their very long day at the range, then I have to tell them that they can continue in the course, but I'm not going to risk the integrity, the safety of everything we're going to do by allowing them to conduct live fire training. I wouldn't say I have to do that every time we run a course, but I have had to do it numerous times. I don't look forward to it, but I know it's a necessity and it's part of my responsibility to keep that integrity of what we've been doing, what has been built, along with those that teach with me. But 100% around accountability, that's where it starts, that's what it ends. And you've got to be able to put the projectile where it's supposed to go.
Yeah. So the next part of that, I guess, is, and you kind of brought it up, Travis Gibson and Mike and those guys up at MGM Targets are good friends of mine, and they build some stellar stuff. And you guys have kind of built some really, really good partnerships over the years. Now, everybody's like, well, how the hell do you shoot in a stadium and not shoot holes in seats or in the field or in the backstop? And a lot of it is the MGM Targets and the other things that you use. Let me go down this road, I guess. Let's change that. So you're Mark Lang, and you're going into one of these. Give us a loadout of the equipment that you use to go in. You're going to talk about your optic real quick, your rifle, the trap, and all that stuff. Kind of go through it so everybody that's listening understands what is your perfect setup for going into something like this.
Well, I've got to start when you brought up the stadium bullet trap. I got to start there with that wonderful family. They're very dear to me, Mike and Travis, and all of them. Family-owned business, Christian people. I really connected with Mike Gibson many, many years ago. I was actually team sniper on my competitive side of our SWAT team, and we would go to these competitions. And I kept seeing that MGM Targets was there. And then furthermore, all the steel that we shot on was MGM steel. Now, that was probably mainstream for competitive shooting, Three Gun Nation and everything. But what we found was more and more these SWAT competitions we went to, Mike Gibson not only was where he makes probably the majority of his profit with the competitive shooting sports, is that he was there supporting law enforcement. And I actually made sure I sat there and spoke with Mike and developed a friendship with him. Now, fast forward on that, when I really wanted to get into taking this course into venues that I knew I was going to have a better bullet trap than what we were using, and this was a long time ago, I called up Mike and I said, Mike, you got a bullet trap. I'm looking on your website at it. I said, can we make some modifications to this? And I told him what I'd like to do. We just kind of talked in theory. And next thing I know, Mike got back to me very, very quickly. And we had what was generation 1 of the stadium bullet trap. which essentially was a 24 by 36 inch bullet trap with a 2-inch rubber facing on it, held in place with a beater plate, a liner plate around 22 inches inside of that, behind the rubber plate. All of it essentially is AR-500 steel. And the other kind of the neat thing on it is because during the venue course, we work the snipers up the venues, so they don't immediately jump up to the upper bowl and start shooting. We're kind of a crawl, walk, run progression. So speaking with Mike, I said, as we go up in these venues, and they all vary and how the angle is, I said, I'd like to make sure we have maximum firing surface available, not only for what I may want to place on the trap itself, but also for these guys. So I said, could you put a leg on the back that articulated so that we could take that leg, lay it back, and then start laying back that trap so that now we would get that firing surface perpendicular as the sniper was up. So that all worked. We actually have improved it. One of the improvements, kind of a funny side note, is we ship these things in prior to the course. The host agency gets some. The guys were complaining about the weight. Essentially, they're a little bit more than 300 pounds a piece. So they said, hey, you need some handles on this thing. And I'm like, well, probably a good point, especially since I'm not handling them that much. So we got Mike to put some handles on there on both sides, so they're much more maneuverable. So you got to have the bullet trap. And look, I will unequivocally tell you that our success of our venue course would not exist if not for Mike Gibson, Travis Gibson, and MGM creating that bullet trap. How in the world am I supposed to go in these venues and have multiple snipers shooting .308 Winchester at times, multiple hits coming into one bullet trap, and capturing the projectile 100% with no escaping? Frankly, I'm still amazed that sometimes we do this training, but it is really in great debt to the Gibsons and everything they've done to supporting us. We have a great partnership with them, and they're like family to us, but we wouldn't exist if it wasn't for a quality bullet trap that I had the confidence to do this. And a lot of that kind of goes into other things, insurance. And like I said, when we hold that hot potato, we really do hold that hot potato. So all the liability is on us, certainly as it dovetails into insurance policies and stuff like that for the duration of the training. Precision rifles. So kind of getting to your question a little bit longer is, you need to show up with a precision rifle that is 1 minute of angle or better. You need to have, now I do tell these guys, I said, look, when you come in the projectile type, we can't be shooting a bonded round. We can't shoot an armor piercing round. And I probably don't want you shooting a monolithic round. So we want you to shoot a little less hitting round, because we do have multiple guys hitting those traps over and over. So there's certain things that allowances that I have in there for those guys, and they know that well ahead before they even come to the class. Typically, those are non-issues because they have multiple rounds that they use for the 308. Other thing I'll talk about is a professional quality rifle scope. Typically, what we see in law enforcement, the guys using is currently they're either using Night Force glass, they're using Vortex, or they're running Leupold. We'll get the Schmidt and Benders here. We'll get the Steiners here. A few other ones and everything like that. But those are the three major manufacturers that we see as police snipers coming through that have been vetted, true. That we feel confident when we see the guys show up in the class. I actually sent out in that email that I spoke to earlier, I actually asked those guys to sit there and tell me about their rifles. And I asked these specifics on them. So each attendee has to email me back what kind of weapon system, rifle scope, if they're using suppressor, what kind of suppressor they have. I also want to know about the projectile. I want to make sure we catch anything that needs to be changed beforehand and not spring it on these guys on day one when they show up. So with that being said, I still have, we'll occasionally have guys email back and say, hey, I'm running this, I'm running that. And, typically it's, I have to say it's kind of half and half. You'll have maybe some glass that is not what I would consider good enough to bet your life on it, or your family's wellness and security on there. And, we would just kind of keep an eye on it. There's a myth out there, and I don't know where it started, that rifle scopes just last forever and forever and forever. And I can only speak in law enforcement, but I know that's not true. I know they can lose their zero, and I've seen it happen. So they don't last for 20 years. And if you're that agency that sits there and recirculates a piece of glass on 3 different rifles, you probably should get a little bit more education about that. Probably not the thing to do. But, we see that where we may have a little less quality glass, and we have a weapon system that, I'm kind of on the fence about. I hold no bars in saying this, and it's not like I'm looking to get in hot water with Remington, but the Remington 700 is a hunting rifle. The history of it and the trigger and the safety is well documented. I tell these guys, as I talk about a specific example of a rifle that I really do not want in the course, if you've got a Remington 700, and this is the marching orders as it stands today, if it's had a history of unintentional discharge, okay, by manipulation of the safety, putting the bolt handle down, anything like that, it's not allowed in the course. No exceptions, none. If you're not truthful with me and you come to the course and we have an issue with that rifle, there's a lot of consequences for that. Not only are you jeopardizing what we're trying to do here, but you're really risking the quality of instruction that the rest of these guys are going to get. Because if we got to kind of sit there and turn, maybe it's a bad example, a bad instance now, and all the focus goes on you. That's not good for you. So I think guys really understand my heart on this. I'm not anti-700. I know it has served the police sniper community for a very long time, but I'm telling you, there's so much more quality, updated through technology, weapon systems out there, bolt rifle and semi-auto, that we need to get off the Remington 700 bolt and look at these other options. Get you some test rifles in, and educate yourself and understand it's okay to grow and look at weapon systems that may be purpose made for what we're doing in law enforcement.
Yeah, and there's plenty of companies out there now that are building phenomenal rifles at a fraction of the cost. The MPA, the new PMR, I believe it's in that 2,000, 2,500. And that comes with a chassis. That comes completely built. There's plenty of options out there for a lot of these guys, and they just don't choose to shop or to look around, for some of this. They find the best deal out there, and it's just like that in the precision rifle world. They'll go out and find the best deal and think it's the hot thing. And, we always say buy once, cry once. That's always one of those things. And what system do you run?
So my agency, we have 2 different manufacturers. For the bolt rifle, currently it's Accuracy International, and for the semi-auto is LaRue Tactical.
Both good choices. Both damn good choices.
Hard to argue about that. And again, look, a lot of this, I really want to press upon the audience here, especially the law enforcement guys who are tuning in. Your ass is on the line. I don't know how more plainly to put it. When you're the end user behind that precision rifle, if you have to come off safe and engage target, threat, multiple threats or something like that, that's all your training. That's all your experience. If you don't like the rifle you're shooting on, if you don't like the rifle scope you got, and it's just not getting the precision that you need out of it, then you need to say something. You need to say something, and you don't need to wait until you're at that moment when you're going to have to crack around to save a life. And now you're like, I wish I had said something. It may not be popular. It may be, hey, after the team's already spent all the money, but it is your duty to sit there and demand, within reason, industry standard equipment out there that your comparable peer groups are using across the country. If you're running this particular rifle and you call a neighboring agency, hey, what precision rifle are you using? He's using the same thing as you are. Okay, well, let me call another one 2 counties over. You call him. He says, yeah, I'm using the same rifle. So you go back there and report that to your chain of command. Do you think that's the way you're going to get a new weapon system to improve where you're sitting at? Of course not. They're going to sit there and say, well, who did you call? That's one of the biggest things that happens in the LE world. When you're trying to get a new equipment, they say, well, check around. Well, who are you going to check around? Well, you're going to check around with agencies that are comparable to your agency and or your SWAT team. That's the information they want back. That's the number one thing supervisors do. So be careful how you handle that and get a wide spread of that. Okay. If you call LAPD and ask them what they use, it may be out of your price budget, and you bring that information back and say, well, heck no, you're not going to get that. So get agencies that are comparable to you, but also, call some big agencies also and kind of see what they're doing too. Look, you got to get out there. You got to go to SHOT Show. And look, I'll throw myself under the bus. I didn't go to SHOT Show for like forever, but I started going to SHOT Show because I needed to. Get out there, go to these trade shows, go to SWAT conferences, you name it. Get out there and educate yourself and be the conduit that goes back and spreads that information to the end that you guys can increase what the quality of the systems that you have.
Yeah, and one thing,
Yes, sir.
One thing that I recommend is PRS and NRL matches. Now, you've got NRL Border Wars, you've got the PRS, you've got the PRS regular series. There's a lot of one-day matches out there. So for them to go out and even just go kind of watch what everybody's using and play with it, a lot of those competitors are going to, if you walked up to them, even me, if one of them walked up to me and said, hey, I want to look at the gun you're shooting, is that all right? I'd be more than happy, play with it, play with the trigger, do things like that. And that is a very simple way for them to get the understanding of those platforms. And then they can look through multiple different glass. They can do that because we had our episode last week talked about understanding how glass works with everybody. Now, Night Force might work for one or two guys on the team and it doesn't work for everybody else. So that's another thing that me personally, I would recommend is going out and, sitting behind something and playing with it. And that's a good place to do it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm glad we circled back to this. So Cole, we got to connect the dots on this somehow. So PRS is huge. We know the growth of it out there, but many police snipers are unaware of precision rifle series. They're unaware of what is occurring. That hey, yeah, if I walk up to you, Cole, you're going to sit there and say, hey man, get on my glass, check it out, work the bolt, wherever the case may be, have at it. Okay, and that's the networking we need to have occur. Now, how do we connect those dots and get it going in the first place? It's having relationships. I mean, everything that's come good graces my way is about relationships. Whether it's relationship with you, Cole, you coming down to Orlando, seeing what we do and everything, me being on your program this evening, that's how you get things done. When you sit there and you hear Mark Lang, well, who is that? But you have a personal relationship. You know who I am. You know that, hey, I'm going to shoot you straight and everything. Then that's how you get stuff done. So we gotta figure out how we can do a better way of connecting the PRS community with local law enforcement. Maybe the PRS community making it intentional to go visit members on the SWAT team, saying, hey, look. And it has nothing to do with initially saying, hey, come out to the range, let's shoot. Just go down there and say, hey, I'd like to talk to your snipers on your SWAT team, offer up some services. Police officers, sometimes we can be kind of a weird group sometimes. Some people will say socially challenged because it's hard for us to get out of our comfort zone or our circle of friends, if you will. Don't take that, don't be offended. That's not everybody, but in general, sometimes it's hard to kind of stretch yourself and go out there, and especially if you're the only cop out there at a PRS shooting a deal. And then you have those that may show up and think that they're going to win it, and then they get very humbled. So we got to do a better job of connecting the two.
Yeah. Sorry, JD. I didn't mean to cut you off. What did you have?
No worries. Hey, we see a lot of that here just with individuals we work with, not in our current organization, like specifically on our committee, but guys that come in for training and everything like that. And one of the things, like, if I could just throw in my 2 cents, a lot of the big question guys don't ask a lot is they might go to different people and say, hey, what do you use? Why do you use that? But very few people quantify it with or follow it up with a why do you use that rifle? Like, you use AIs and LaRues. I've shot AIs. I had a couple LaRues, fantastic rifles. I like them for specific reasons. And I've had very few people say, why do you like a LaRue? It's either, oh, I like it or I don't like it. I think that's one of the biggest questions for everyone listening in that gets left out is the why, because the why is really what's going to tell you what you need and what you don't. Because if like three counties are using the same thing, but if you're urban and they're all rural, that why is kind of a big deal from where we're sitting.
Well, man, I'm glad you hit on that. That's that inertia. I don't know how it's organizational inertia. You hear the term institutional inertia. It's kind of like if you ask someone, why do you do this, whether it's a tactic or a technique, all they can say reply is, and this is, we hear it so much, we see it so much in our law enforcement world, is that's just the way we've always done it. And it ends right there. That's how we do it. Look, I'm the old guy on the team. All right. But the worst thing I can be for my fellow teammates is to be closed-minded and not sit there and be able to answer the why. Why are we doing this? Okay. We need to challenge the thinking. There's nothing wrong in a respectful way challenging a particular tactic, a technique, a procedure. Why are we doing this? If you know the why, you can explain it and you can articulate it, then it may end right there. But maybe it's something that needs to be improved and something that's been well overdue to be improved. But I think the why, I think that a lot of times the why, they have no clue because it was never told to them, instilled to them.
Yeah, and Dale even commented, he goes, volunteered exactly that to our local LEO shooters. They had no interest. And talking to the guys down at Arena Training Facility last year when I was in Georgia doing some demos, they did that same thing. They offered some of the local law enforcement departments to come out and run with soft guys and run some badass stuff that they would never have the opportunity to run, and it was free. And it amazes me how many law enforcement agencies don't take advantage of, the opportunities that they're given because they, maybe it is because they're too good or whatever it is, but that just kind of, it boggles my mind. If there's something out there that I know that could possibly make me better, I'm sure as hell going to try it, and that's one of those things. You're holding someone's life in your hand. You could be holding someone's life in your hand one of these days, and how are you going to react to that? Which is, a lot of them don't think that far ahead, I don't think. And maybe the mentality of, I'm a sniper, so I don't have to, or something like that might get in the way, which it might not. But what are your thoughts on that, Mark?
Someone won't be happy when I say this, but you got to get over yourself. This thought that we cannot learn from others and we can only learn from other law enforcement personnel. Come on, seriously. Those that shoot precision rifles, they have something of value that can make you better. I guarantee you may go into the day, even if you're made to go there, take your 6 snipers and go out there and spend, whether it's 4 hours and an entire day with them. You're going to learn something. And I tell you, you'll see a transition throughout the day of those police snipers' outlook, the way they feel toward maybe a PR shooter in the morning, where they're at lunchtime, and where they're at when 3 or 4 o'clock rolls around, okay, if it was a longer shooting day. And I think you'll see that progression. But you got to get over yourself. You got to get out there. And if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. So really hear me, LA community. If you're not moving forward, so what does that mean? You got to be taking advantage of things like this, okay? If someone comes to you and has offered the opportunity for you to come out, maybe they say, hey, man, all you got to do is just drive out to this private range. This is where we do all of our PRS training at and everything. Come on out here, man. Let us show you what we're shooting, show you how we're using tripods now. Because, look, I learned something, last year, that PRS community is not necessarily using the rifle rest on the tripod to stabilize the gun. They're coming down on the tripod legs. So where does that information come from? Where did I learn that? Where can I now, and I'm going to turn around and pass that along to others. I get that from the PRS community. So you just got to get over yourself. Look, it is at times, we're kind of a strange bunch, cops are. It's hard for some to sit there and understand that a civilian may impart great knowledge to you, and that's okay. And you need to let it happen, because at the end of the day, it's about saving lives. Okay, if I don't put the bullet where it needs to go, there's going to be probably hell to be paid for it. Okay, and hopefully, not only would you not be facing possible prison time yourself, depending on the circumstances, but you're risking your family's financial security, which I think a lot of them don't think that far ahead of time. it's your ass, and you're behind the trigger, and no one's going to care about excuses if it turns bad.
Yeah, and I know JD, I've seen a lot of the guys that you work with the same way, that a lot of those guys are starting to get into the PRS style shooting to make themselves better, which is a great thing to me anyway.
It's huge. One of the things, I'm actually writing something about it, because you look at, I've seen this with military guys going to PRS. There's an attitude, and I'll briefly touch on kind of the article. I'm going to throw coals away whenever I get it done. Whenever military guys go shoot PRS, a lot of what we see with the young guys is, I'm going to crush this. This is nothing. And then they get there, and like those LE guys that Mark deals with, they get their asses handed to them. So they get bitter against PRS because they look at PRS as, oh, hey, you're just buying your way to the top, with 6 GT and all that, which, there can be an argument made for that with some of the guys. And it's not necessarily ill intention. It's just that's what they want to shoot. It's easier to shoot. But they don't realize that shooting PRS is going to make you a far better technical shooter. Little things like that. And then a lot of really good PRS guys there, but I see kind of the same type of argument against the TAC shooters, because I shoot TAC because, hey, that's what I deployed. And they're like, why would you shoot that? And it's like, bro, this is kind of what my life depends on. So why wouldn't I shoot this? Why would I shoot an easier caliber? So it's a really interesting, I guess, dynamic that you get between 10% on both sides, I'd say. But yeah, PRS, any type of match like that is invaluable just for building mechanics. And that's what you're doing. You're building mechanics. You're not, taking tactics necessarily from PRS. It's just, it's positional shooting like you talked about, Mark. It's perfecting that.
Yeah, none of us ever arrived. I mean, two decades as a police sniper. I haven't arrived. I don't know everything. I have no problem throwing myself out there and telling you guys, I don't have it all figured out. I never will have it all figured out, but that's okay. As long as I continue to move forward and learn as much as I can. And in my role now, really more as a teacher for Tacflow and the other guys, I got a great group of guys that teach for us. I want to shout out to Kelly Canterbury, Jair Brown, Josh Nielsen, Bill Myers, and Sean Harris. Great group of guys, and we've got some other ones in the works there too. I don't want anybody teaching for me who thinks they've got it all figured out or they have arrived, because you're going to be an instructor. You're not going to be a teacher. And I think we need to be in the business of teaching if you have that responsibility, whether it's military or law enforcement. And I think at the end of the day, you got to humble yourself, man. There is always someone who is that much better than you somewhere. And if you keep that in perspective, then you'll understand that you never have arrived, and you got to keep going in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think the most important point of that is walking into it, not necessarily going for the win, but how in the hell can I interdict this into what I need to learn? And like I said, coming back to, I understand that these are the places where I'm probably going to have to be in a sniper situation, whether it's off the back of a car, under a car, using different things. How can I take the props in the shooting and make them to something that I can kind of think of in my head? And I think that would help a lot of people out to where they're kind of taking one and understanding where they can use that learning and that training. We've gone quite a long ways, but there's 2 more things that I want to hit real quick. And this is one that you guys have been doing a lot lately, is the large caliber rifle instruction. That's 338 Lapua mag and 50 BMG. Do you want to kind of hit on that real quick, Mark?
Yeah, a couple of brief points on that. Again, the acts of terror that we see and continue to see overseas, certainly UK has a lot of this with the vehicle ramming attacks, vehicle intrusion, kind of however you want to call it, is you got to have a plan. At the end of the day, look, your local law enforcement SWAT team, the buck stops with them. I don't know how else to say it. Who's going to come in after that? Okay, unless something's changed, I don't think that the special forces are going to come in our homeland and take over things. So the buck stops with us. And, that may be someone that have a personal attachment to, that may be the subject of a terror attack and everything. So we got to learn from history, whether it was Paddock, on 1 October, in Vegas. We got to learn from that. But we should have already seen that back in 1966 when Whitman got up in there at Austin, Texas, and started shooting from a elevated position. There's little things that, again, when I talk about that educational component, we got to pay attention to. The large calibers are here for SWAT teams. And I've done quite a few of these courses. Just recently did one out in Vegas. But what we're seeing is more and more of your SWAT teams are having the capabilities to have 50 caliber BMG, and a lot of them actually have 338 Lapua. A lot of guys would ask me, 338 Lapua Magnum, that's not exactly the sexy round anymore. Please keep in mind, there's a reason why it was selected and why it's become ingrained in law enforcement. Things that you see with special forces, snipers, and stuff like that, as they change calibers, cartridges, and stuff like that, weapon systems, that doesn't happen as quickly for us. In law enforcement, it's a longer process. So you may have anywhere from 5 to 10 years before something that's been vetted and in use by the special forces snipers actually filters down to the LE, so that you would say, well, out of 10 agencies, 10 SWAT teams, you got 4 or 5 of them that have this particular caliber weapon system. So one of the exciting thing is that we continue to have students attend our courses, and it's an instructor level certification on this, because we talked about ways to use those 2 different calibers to disrupt engines, disable them, and stuff like that. And, there may arise some circumstances when you may need to use it kind of person born against a person, depending on the scenario. So we've seen a huge uptick with that. And I'm excited to see where we're going to be in the next 5 years with it.
Yeah, that's good to know. And I think a lot of law enforcement agencies, especially, and I saw one of your pictures a while back, you were on one of the stadiums, and you were actually not watching inside the stadium, you're watching outside the stadium, and you're watching, bowered posts, certain ways that a car could get into the area where all the people are standing. And I think that's a good way to train, understanding that cars and a lot of those, may I say it, chicken shits that are terrorists use different things to blow people up. They do it, in the Middle East a lot, where they use VBIDs and, IEDs and different things like that. So that's cool. And that would be a great thing for a lot of the bigger cities, I think, to learn. Don't you agree?
Yeah, look, there's no security plan or operational plan that is 100% foolproof. If you are doing Overwatch in an open air event and you have a large caliber rifle, it needs to be there with your and 308s still mainstream in our community. It needs to be right there. You cannot think that you're going to get back to the station, pick it up, get it back to where you're at, and save the day and save lives. It's not the case. So I'm a huge proponent of telling these guys to come to the class, and we're seeing things change. Those large calibers, they get deployed on the Overwatches right by your 308 Winchester. They're ready to rock and roll because you don't have time to sit there and call it to the scene. It's got to be ready there at the Overwatch position.
All right. That's a good idea. So the last and final is the aerial platform. Now, I know you guys have been doing a lot of stuff with the aerial platform, which is helicopters, certain things like that, shooting out of them. That's huge, I think, in a lot of areas where it's probably beneficial to get to a scene really fast, or you might not have an angle into a high-rise building or certain things. And you guys are doing a lot of training with that, correct?
Yeah, we've seen an uptick in this also. My basic statements are: if you have a SWAT team and you have a helicopter unit, you probably should give consideration to a formal aerial platform program. But let me kind of back up. The reason why we don't have many, and I think it's because we do a very poor job of selling it. So what do I mean by that? If I reserve a sniper or an entry personnel SWAT team member getting into a helicopter with a rifle, SBR, whatever it may be, because there is a crisis occurring, the connotation, what we're saying is the only time you need that, the only time you're going to get in a helicopter is for a use of force incident. Well, if you say that to your supervision, or you're trying to sell your program, get this off the ground, the only time we're going to get in the helicopter, the only time we will be in there is that we're probably going to come off safe and pull the trigger. Well, then they're probably not going to let you get off the ground on this. And I'm not saying, what I'm trying to say is the realities are is you will be, and you should be doing proactive aerial overwatch more than anything that comes close to coming off safe and pulling the trigger. You're the eyes in the sky, but also you have a consequence for the actions of people on the ground. Keep in mind, area platform shooting is not precision rifle fire. It is accurate rifle fire. Now, accurate rifle fire is a relative term depending on who is speaking and preaching about it. But I'm very happy to say the way I teach it in our curriculum is that I can get you to within several feet of a piece of steel by the end of the course that you should be hitting. Now, again, many factors go into that: urban environment, rural environment, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, if you've got a 3-minute gun at 100 yards, you got a 3-minute gun up in the air.
Yeah, so we just need to come to Texas and shoot hogs, and then we'll all be proficient, correct?
Mhm.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of that stuff going on.
Yeah, that's freaking shit. That's expensive though. So, last point. Now, a lot of people want to know who Mark Lang is and want to know what Tacflow is. Now, I've seen a few of your articles published in different locations. How can somebody learn more about, you know, some of the stuff you've been writing about and maybe train themselves a little better?
Well, first of all, look, and you know, I have a hard time selling myself, and I don't want to sell myself. I'm at the end of the day, I try to be as humble as possible because I know there's someone better out there. There's someone that's going to be the next one that's going to replace me. I know all this stuff, so it's never about that. And it's not about me. At Tacflow Academy, we're a small business, but we care about quality, exceptional training officers for today's threats, the emerging threats that are to come. If you look at our website, www.tacflow.com, you will see that we don't have every particular topic or course that a SWAT team may want to train in, and that's okay. We're not masters at training every discipline out there, but what we do train is curriculums that have been created by our subject matter experts that are on the instructor page that are very, very good at what they're doing. We challenge ourselves all the time to be teachers of this and not just an instructor. I think anybody can get a certificate, a piece of paper, go out there and run a line and call them an instructor and go about their merry business. But can you really get down and teach and give someone multiple ways to improve themselves? That's what we challenge ourselves to. That's our standard we hold ourselves to also. The writing bug I got into about 5 years ago and everything. Honestly, I wasn't that good in school. I certainly wasn't that good in English, but it just kind of came to me that I had, I think, something to be offered in print, whether it was online. And I've had several things published with the National Tactical Officers Association and then Law Enforcement Technology. So I'm just trying to spread the information. To me, my heart, my passion is about the student. It's about that LE professional. It's about that male professional too, because at times we have the military professional come through our courses also. That is why I do this. And we say it at the courses. All the guys that teach with us, you know, you burn 40, 50 hours and go off and teach for an entire week, and you're still an active officer. Why do you do this? You're not really getting rich doing this. We do it because we have a passion to teach, and we care about these guys in every area of this country, and it's really about them. Whenever it stops being about them and it starts being about us, then it's time for us to stop doing what we're doing.
Yeah, and that's cool. And I can speak to that, you know, the way you guys kind of broke apart and took each sniper when I was through. I mean, granted, it was only one course, but the way you guys kind of broke it down, took everybody and worked step by step with each one of them. It wasn't, I mean, I've taken a lot of classes from a lot of top name people, and they just go out, they sit down and they shoot and they run through a couple of things. The way you guys kind of broke it down into sections and then really worked with each one individually was a big factor for me into, you know, kind of giving you guys props there in the little bit of knowledge that I have. So definitely look into Tacflow, and, you know, if you want to get better, this is the way to do it. So now, last question: how do departments get you to come help?
All you have to do is send an email to probably I'm thinking the website. Email info at Tacflow, Tacflow.com. Just send an email from your agency saying what, or even if you're civilian, we have limited civilian courses, precision rifle of such nature, but primarily a lot of our stuff is focused on LE military. So just send us there what kind of training you're interested in. If it's something we do or we think we can do, we'll tell you that. If it's something that an area that we're not going to get into or we don't have a subject matter expert in that, then we'll also let you know that also. But just send us an email and, we'll introduce you and connect you to the right person.
All right. Good to know. If you have more questions, always ask. The info at tacflow.com is great. If you want to get a hold of Mark, if you want to ask us any questions, the Facebook page and Instagram are always up. Again, if you're listening out there on iHeartRadio or any of the other great ones, appreciate you downloading. Please give us feedback. Please leave us reviews so we know exactly how you're all feeling. I appreciate you, JD, for helping us tonight. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for the time, Cole. It's great being on with you.
Yep. Thanks, Mark, for taking your time out of your busy schedule to talk to us. And hopefully it opens some eyes to some snipers out there, and hopefully they can get the training that they need or want.
Yeah, and I'm not here to necessarily plug what we do at Tacflow, but there's just I will leave with this: vet your trainers out there, whether it's police sniper or whether it's entry team, whatever you're doing. Do your homework on them and demand that they come and they teach you. And if they don't, then you need to let them know. But you need to do your homework on the training providers out there. And thank you for letting me be on, JD. Very nice to meet you, and Cole. Hope to see you soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've got one coming up in Colorado next month?
Yes.
I have to take a short bus.
Yeah, love to see the bus.
Don't be afraid to pipe up. Send us your questions or topics and we'll cover them on the show. Thanks for listening.